My name is Grace, or Gracie, whatever you want to call me, and I am a senior. I am just about to graduate, and I have been pursuing the IB diploma for the past 2 years. Today, I'm going to be talking about my math IA. My math IA is called The Application of the Bayesian Formula to the Door Scene in It Chapter 1. So I wrote this in May of 2021, and I will be running through it today with all of you. I hope you enjoy. So to start, one of my absolute favorite stories of all time is It by Stephen King. The two most recent movies are based off of the book. They're It Chapter 1, made in 2017, and It Chapter 2, made in 2019. After having seen the first chapter in theaters a week after its release, I was completely hooked on the character arcs, the movie's versatility and theme, the main topics that the movie touches upon, and, of course, the entire horror aspect and how it fits into the shining theme in many of Stephen King's books. My hyperfixation on the movie continues through today, and is now something that I want to apply to other things in my life. When I was tasked with the challenge of coming up with a situation to apply mathematical process to, my immediate thought was to pull a scene from one of those It movies. Looking through different areas of math to touch on for the IA process, probability stood out the most in its versatility and applicability to many situations and occurrences within the movies. My original path of research and application was to take the door scene from It Chapter 1 and apply it to the Monty problem. This application seemed to work in my mind, metaphorically speaking, because of the similarities between the problem, both having a 3-door scenario and multiple doors having been opened in the span of the situation. Once investigating the math and how it, in fact, did not work with the situation, I delved deeper into the probability world and tried to find an even more suitable problem to apply to my 3-door scene, and was finally able to find an oddly applicable probability concept called the Bayesian Theory. This theory proved to be mathematically applicable and morally applicable in many ways with the It door scene. The theory itself can yield actual numerical responses to the 2 probability attempts in the scene, but in the end, although the theory applies mathematically, horror movie logic and tactics destroy the possibility of any expected result. The best evaluation of this scene may not be up to a probability equation, mainly due to the psychological aspects. The most suitable problem not fully applying to the mathematical perspective is the Decoy Effect. This effect is a proven method to alter an individual's decision-making through the addition of an option that endorses comparison. This method is statistically shown in real life to alter people's decisions from a business perspective, as well in this scene's perspective. Now, on to the door scene. There just so happens to be 2 different door scenes that occur collectively in the 2 respective movies. The first one occurring in It Chapter 1, where the main characters are children, and the second occurring in It Chapter 2, 27 years later, when the characters are middle-aged. These scenes are fairly similar. They both have the same parameters for the 3 doors, and they have correlating scary objects behind the doors. The scene I decided to use is the first door scene in the very first movie adaptation of the story. This door scene, identical to the second door scene, has a very scary door, a scary door, and a not scary at all door. These doors always appear in a set of 3 and always have the same appearance, that being very dingy and bloody, with the words on the door appearing to have been written in blood that drips upwards. The 2 main characters who are faced with this door scenario are Richie Tozier and Bill Denbrough. The group of kids are inside the confines of a haunted house that is continually messing with each of the characters individually. This haunted house is called Neibolt and is the resting place of the main antagonist monster known as Pennywise, or It. Pennywise is taking advantage of this opportunity to try and distract and befuddle these 2 boys with this door scenario while he preys on another individual character, that character being Eddie Casbrack. The boys are forced to make a decision between which door to go through in order to get out of their impending predicament. The only logical choice for them is to try their luck with one of these doors and hope for the best. The first door they decide to open is the not scary at all door. This door made the most logical sense to them based on the name and their hope that it is truly not scary at all. This door, once opened, appears to be a normal closet with some hangers and some shoes until they both hear a girl's voice say, "Where's my shoe?" through the darkness. The boys turn on the light in the closet and find there is a severed girl's body in the closet, Betty Ripson. Only her top half is actually there. Her bottom half makes an appearance in the second movie's door scene. They immediately close the door and try to gather their wits after seeing something so horrendous. They turn back to the door again, hoping that by opening the very same not scary at all door, they might get a better outcome. This time, having a little more bravery in their hearts, they swing the door open, and what lies ahead is the empty hallway they had originally entered the room from. They race down the hallway as fast as possible to help their other friend in danger, thus concluding the door scene. Now onto the Monty Hall problem. The basics of the Monty Hall problem are as follows. An individual is given the option to choose one of 3 doors, and it is known before the person chooses the door that there is 1 prize door and 2 doors that have no prize. The individual gets to choose 1 numbered door, that being door 1, door 2, or door 3. Once the door is chosen, the person has a 1/3 chance of that door being the prize door, and a 2/3 chance that the door they have chosen has nothing. Monty Hall then reveals one of the no prize doors and asks the contestant if they would like to switch their originally chosen door for the remaining unopened door. This reveals the change that occurs in the probability of the doors in question. Most would think that only 2 doors remaining would mean there would be a 50-50 chance of getting the prize, but in effect, the remaining door has a probability of 2/3, making it more likely to win the prize if the contestant switches their original door to the remaining door. The scenario comes from the show Let's Make a Deal, which was a popular American game show in the 1970s and has since returned with new hosts in recent years. The original host was Monty Hall, the genius who came up with the premise of the show. The show had the 3-door problem as its baseline attraction, and the no prize doors often had goats behind them, while the prize doors had something expensive and sought after, like a car or a luxurious vacation. This problem has stunted mathematicians for decades, mainly due to the fact that there hadn't been a clear understanding for which door out of the last 2 is the more logical or more probable winner. After taking into account the changed probability of the remaining doors, the choice is seemingly easy, in that the remaining door is the one that should be chosen in every instance. The action of switching allows the person to go from having a 1/3 chance to having a 2/3 chance at winning the prize. It has been shown after repeated trials of the Monty Hall problem that if the option is chosen every time to switch, the individual has a higher probability of receiving the prize by 1/3 than if they had stayed with their original option. Applying the Monty Hall problem. At first, when applying the it door scene to the Monty Hall problem, it seems to work until the first door is chosen, opened, closed, and opened again. The theory remains true through the decision to open the not scary at all door. But after the door is closed, the similarities between the problems are non-existent, and the change in probability is clearly different since what's behind the door changes in the door scene. After some disappointment in discovering the vast number of differences between the Monty Hall problem and how it could not be applied to determine the outcome of the it door scene, I began to research different ways to help determine probability, even in the most unlikely of situations like this one. I stumbled upon a few videos on Bayesian Theory and thought it was very interesting since it takes into account random and uncertain variables and could be applied to the it door scene. The Bayesian Theory. The Bayesian Theory was created by Thomas Bayes. This theory is a basic interpretation of probability as an extension of logic and valid tools of accuracy. The fact that coherence and rationality are taken into account in this theorem is why the mathematical response is able to be derived from the application of this scene. The Bayes method generally will use unknown quantities as the variables, and is the model source for uncertainty. The basics of the theory are as follows. The concept of probability is not completely based on things like frequency or propensity, like many other probability theorems, but instead is based on a combination of reasonable expectations, the representation of a state of knowledge, and the validity of a personal belief. The bounds of propositional logic take precedence in the hypothesis that is created and allows for a prior probability hypothesis and a posterior probability hypothesis. The prior hypothesis is made with the knowledge of the probability in the problem and the standards for the experiment at hand. This hypothesis will be framed saying that this event will occur in these circumstances, basically checking to see how probable the event that is desired to occur is. The posterior hypothesis is made with the same information as the prior hypothesis and the information that is gained about the probability of the prior hypothesis event. The hypothesis for the posterior motive is now able to be changed from the original prior guess for the better, based on the learned knowledge of the event's probability. It is shown that the continual repetition of this process of creating an original prior hypothesis and then taking the information gathered from the trial to create a new improved posterior hypothesis any number of times will slowly but surely allow the tester to make an almost completely accurate hypothesis at some point. Even still, there is no way that a tester can be 100% accurate even with this process. The theory is seen as follows, along with a key and an extended version. Applying the Bayesian theory. When applying the theorem to the scene that is being investigated, it is fairly simple to pinpoint the hypotheses that are made in the situation as well as the probability through the usage of this formula. Although this formula still has its flaws, it ends up working really well with the unique parameters of this situation. That includes the labeling of the doors, the evident facade that occurs, and the repeated choice of the same door in the scene. The basics to applying this scene to the physical formula is as follows. The hypothesis's baseline is the guess that the not scary at all door is the best bet to getting out of this situation. This is why it is the only door that is opened in both attempts. The change in the hypothesis occurs by the change in heart that the two boys in the scene exhibit between opening, closing, and opening the door again. The first attempt's math is seen as follows. This means that the first attempt that the boys had at opening the not scary at all door, they had a 25% chance of the hypothesis they were hoping for to occur in the event based on the Bayesian theory calculations. The second attempt's math is seen as follows. This means that the second time the boys opened the not scary at all door, they had a 100% chance of their hypothesis occurring in the event based on the Bayesian theory calculations. This means that the hypothesis became 300% more accurate after the door was closed for the first time. The change that the boys made in their hypothesis, the change in heart, was the cause for this monumental change in probability. This theory's application for this situation shows some holes in its complete truthfulness. This is mainly because when logic is accounted for in the equation, many things change. Assessing the horror movie magic will help give the entire situation more grounds. Horror movie magic. The Bayesian theory was clearly seen to work much better with the specific situation at hand, but it still lies that there are some things to take into account before labeling the Bayesian theory as completely truthful. The framework of probability will always be applicable to this scene, but there needs to be the inclusion of logic and psychological aspects to the scene because of its utter uniqueness and its origins having been from a horror movie of all things. The simple fact that this scene is pulled from a wonderfully done horror movie is what makes it so hard to apply to a probability problem. The coin term here, horror movie magic, is meant to help explain the scenario. Since it is a fixed situation in a horror movie, it is meant to contain certain aspects that will help the plot and the meaning of the whole movie. This, sadly, helps to show how fixed the situation truly is, and how it causes a situation to not necessarily have any valid probability due to its inability to be recreated in life. As mentioned before, there is a facade that makes an appearance in this scene. When analyzing the movie itself, understanding that the two boys are simply being messed with at the moment to keep them busy while the monster targets another one of the main characters gives way to explaining the facade. The facade is the frail barrier that the monster sets up in the first place to scare the boys. More specifically, this is the scariest thing they see behind the not scary at all door. This facade then disintegrates once they close the door out of fear. The facade was never strong in the first place, meaning that the probability was bound to dramatically change one way or another between the instances where the door is opened twice. Knowing that this is a well-made horror movie makes it not a good example of a probability problem. A common trope of a good scary movie is to have a few jump scares and more looming scares that occur in the span of the movie. Although this may be slightly subjective, this is exactly why this movie is good. There is the incorporation of a jump scare in this scene, as well as a looming scare that is present the entire time the characters are in the Neibolt haunted house. The reason this needs to be clearly explained is because it helps to contrast what this movie does in comparison to most cheesy scary movies. A cheesy scary movie would make this scene comedic relief, having the teen boys cuss and babble in their predicament, rather than fully feeling the scary atmosphere. The looming scare allows for this scene to allow the presence of a completely fixed outcome. This means that no matter what, the first time the boys opened the door, there was bound to be something scary behind it. The second time they opened the door, there would certainly be nothing scary behind the door. In fact, based on this knowledge, it can be collected that all three doors in the first attempt are undoubtedly scary, and the three doors become clear in the second attempt. Having this knowledge helped to give the differing values in the mathematical application in the Bayesian theory. The decoy effect. Another consideration is a psychological phenomenon that many marketers use to their benefit. The most common example is one that entices a customer to choose the more expensive option in an array of products with the help of this marketing tactic. This effect causes asymmetrical dominance, also known as the attraction effect, to occur in the brain, and involves the individual given yet another option that is asymmetrically dominant. Doing this makes the other option seem inferior or superior, because there is now the introduction of a framework for comparison. This option is known as the decoy in the decoy effect. The classic way of describing this effect is seen here. This situation is one where there are people coming to a movie theater and the theater wants to try a very common trick on all of their customers. The decoy in this instance is the medium-sized popcorn. This popcorn size is solely there to help persuade people to buy the large. By doing this, they end up making the large popcorn look like more of a bargain based on the small price change between the two sizes. Statistically speaking, more people will go to buy the large popcorn because of this framework trick, thus causing the theater to gain more capital in the process. Applying the decoy effect. The reason why this psychological occurrence is something to take into account for this scene's reference is because of the presence of the scary door. Initially, these doors, having been labeled in such a manner, makes this situation based in logic more than it seems. This scary door is seen as the situation's decoy, because it is the most basic option out of the three doors and is the basic framework for the wording in the other doors. When analyzing the doors' names, the other two doors in question are complete exaggeration, adding the terms very to one and not at all to the other. The presence of this scary door is completely necessary in that it gives an option for comparison and is seen as the utterly inferior option out of the three. Because of that, the stake of making a choice is intensified with the addition of this door to the trio, because it introduces the exacerbated titles for the other doors that helps to cause more psychological distress for the people in the situation. This touch is hard to pick up on when first assessing the scene, but when analyzed, it helps to show the true genius behind the creation of this scenario in the first place. This also adds another layer to the mathematical analysis of the scenes themselves, again showing how difficult it is to fit this scene into a mathematical framework. In conclusion, this chosen scene from the movie It Chapter 1 has many layers to it. The scene at first seemed to work with the mathematical framework of the Monty problem in my mind, but once applied was unable to satisfy the parameters of the problem, other than the fact that there is the appearance of 3 doors. The Bayesian theorem ended up being completely applicable mathematically and is able to reveal numerical values that help label the probability of the hypotheses that were attempted. It was found that the first attempted hypothesis had a 25% chance of being accurate, and the second attempted hypothesis had a 100% chance of being accurate. This drastic change in probability makes the whole scenario make more sense to the naked eye and simplifies the probability aspect. The horror movie magic that occurs in this scene is what tests the mathematical theory's truthfulness with the occurrence of a facade. Understanding the tropes of a well-made horror movie also helps to make more sense of the situation, logically speaking. Lastly, the psychological aspect of this scene is evident in its usage of a play on logic, as well as the manipulative decoy effect that is used in the scene. Final takeaway from this scene, with all of the layers accounted for, is that there was bound to be the occurrence of a scary outcome and a non-scary outcome in their respective order, making this situation completely fixed and invalid in real-life probability. I learned through this IA process that a number may not always be your answer. I struggled to find the true meaning of this scene and its end applicability to the math world was what my goal was for my IA, and I successfully succeeded. This IA had to be my favorite IA that I had to write in the past 2 years. In fact, I think probably my favorite IB paper that I've ever had to write. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope you learned something and enjoyed me babbling about things I love and math. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.